afternoon and welcome. I'd like to call to order the March 22nd, 2023 City of Asheville Multimodal Transportation Commission meeting. My name is Dennis Wenzel and I'm the chair of this group. Our meetings continue to be held virtually for the time being, but there are many ways for interested parties to participate in this gathering. The City of Asheville Engagement Hub, which includes a variety of links and phone numbers, can be found on the Multimodal Transportation Commission page of the City of Asheville's website. Visiting this page is the best way to take part in our virtual meetings. Members, staff, and guests, please remember to keep your microphones muted at all times when you're not speaking so we can minimize feedback and other background noise. I'd like to now welcome our commission members. When I call your name, please introduce yourself and let us know what interest you represent. Randy Warren.
Thanks, Dennis. I'm Randy Warren, and my interests aren't necessarily evolving, although sometimes that happens too, but our groups that support MMTC are evolving. So my Bike Ped Task Force was my former association with the supporting committee, but that's evolving, as we'll talk about later today.
Absolutely. Thanks, Randy. Kenny Armstrong.
Hey, this is Kenny. Same as Randy, I'm also on the formerly known as Greenway Committee, so a little bit in flux, but I represent that group, which has bike ped focus. My camera is temporarily off because I'm at the bus stop waiting for my son to get home from school. So sorry, but I'll get on in a minute. And you're welcome for not adding an extra car to the road.
Thanks, Kenny. Jack Eigelman.
Hi, everyone. Jack Eigelman. I'm an at-large member.
Hey, Jack. Leanna Joyner.
I don't see Leanna on the call yet.
Looks like we lost Dennis.
He looks frozen, doesn't he?
Yeah. So I'll as we go forward, then is Pat Katz on the call? I have to look at the agenda, so I can't look at the live cast anymore. Pat? And if Pat not, then Bill.
Okay, sorry about that.
Oh,
Bill was unable to join us today. Joseph Chesler.
Yes, good afternoon, Joe Chesler. I'm living East-West Asheville, relatively new commission member and transit liaison. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Elise Mauder.
Hi, my name is Elise. This is my first meeting on the Multimodal Transportation Commission, and my interests are bicycle and pedestrian.
Hey, Elise, welcome. We'll have a couple more minutes in a moment to kind of let you introduce yourself a little bit further. Joe Archibald.
Hi, everyone. Joe Archibald. I am the liaison from the Planning and Zoning Commission to Multimodal Transit, also an active bike rider. And I am going to grace you without camera presence today because my camera has stopped working. Sorry about that.
Thanks, Joe. Welcome. Elizabeth Likas. Elizabeth had a procedure today, so unfortunately she's unable to join us. Maggie Ullman, our council liaison, is also she's traveling for work, so she's unable to join us as well. But that's our group for now. So we'll move on to our first item, which is the review and approval of today's agenda. Can I get a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Thanks, Jack. And a second?
I'll second that. Oh, sorry.
Second, Randy. Perfect. And any comments or questions on today's agenda? Excellent. Without
Just other than that you want to make time to hear more about Elise. So
definitely, we will do that in just a moment. Maybe if I get through these two items, then we'll go right to that. That's acceptable. All right. Without further comment, we'll go through a roll call vote. Randy Warren.
Aye.
Kenny Armstrong.
Aye.
Jack Eigelman.
Aye.
see if Leanne, doesn't look like Leanne is in here yet. Pat Katz is not here. Joe Chesler,
Aye.
Elise Motter,
Here, aye.
and I'm an aye as well. Motion carries. Next item is the review and approval of February 22nd, 2023 minutes of our meeting. Can I get a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve those minutes.
Thank you, Jack. And a second?
Second.
Thank you, Joe. Any comments or questions on the minutes from February 22nd? All right, without comment, we'll do a roll call vote. Randy Warren,
Aye.
Kenny Armstrong,
Aye.
Jack Eigelman,
Aye.
Joe Chesler,
Aye.
Elise Motter.
I will abstain, seeing as I was not at that meeting.
Thank you. And I'm an aye as well. Motion carries. The next item is we have a brand new member joining us today, taking, I believe, maybe Maggie's spot. Elise, you want to tell us a little bit about you and your connection to transit in our town?
Sure. My name is Elise Martyr. I've been an Asheville resident for coming up on 6 years. I have been appointed to this position here to represent bicycle and pedestrian interests. I'm an avid walker in my neighborhood using the greenways, and I'm also a roller skater who uses the greenways a lot. And so I'm excited to join this group that does a lot of really good work that affects Asheville residents directly, and to represent those interests in this group. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And we welcome you and look forward to your active participation. We do have an item of public comment. I would, if without objection, I'd like to reserve that to read it. Let's see, and coming up on an item, which is our second item of new business, if that's okay with everyone.
Mhm.
So we'll move into new business. And Jessica, do we want to go right into the first item of new business? Does that make sense for you?
Yes, that sounds good.
Perfect. So we'll go into item 1, which is the proposed NCDOT Sandhill Sardis intersection improvement. Ken.
Thank you, Dennis. Yes, my name is Ken Putnam, and I'm the director of the transportation department. You have looked at one of these projects in the past, probably about a year ago, where the DOT is going to do a project, and all they need from us is, or the city council, is a resolution of support. The program that they're using is called High Impact, Low Cost. And when a project costs more than $250,000, that requires a resolution from the appropriate local government. This intersection improvement, this is out in the Inca Camler area. It's at the intersection of Sardis Road and Sandhill Road. They've identified a history of rear end crashes there. So the main thing they want to do is build a right turn lane to try to minimize those crashes. And at the same time, they will be adding a sidewalk segment. They will be adding a pedestrian crosswalk with the head signals, and there's an existing signal there, and they're going to have to relocate one of the metal posts to accommodate all this, but all the work will be done within their right of way. And so with that, I'll just pause and see if you have any questions. And what I need you all to do, and there's a suggested motion that you all endorse this and want it to go on to city council for approval. Go ahead, Randy. I think you might have been first. I saw a whole bunch of hands go up at the same time, so I apologize if I...
Okay. Thanks, Ken. Yeah, so my son's school, Franklin School of Innovation, is really close to that intersection,
Okay.
so I'm there a lot. And then also it's one of my favorite ride routes, goes right by there as well, too. So the information we received had a really rough diagram, and it wasn't super helpful. So I'm guessing that the right turn lane is when you're traveling towards Inca on Sardis Road, turning right onto Sandhill. Is that where they're putting the right turn lane, right by the gas station? I think it's a BP station that's right there. Is that right?
That's correct. Uh-huh.
And then, So I guess I'd like to see, so I always have concerns when we do this kind of stuff, just because, you know, if we make the intersection wider to accommodate a right turn lane, then people have to travel further across the street if they're crossing the street there. And I know that this area is an area that's developing rapidly and has a increasing traffic all the time. And it's backed up sometimes on Sardis Road from Brevard Road, literally all the way to Sardis Road. I mean, again, I'm there picking up my son from school a lot. And so it needs a lot of treatment in a lot of different ways. But, and also there's students that are coming from the school. And so it's actually outside the school zone, quote unquote, but a lot of students walk a long ways away and stuff too. So there is some significant pedestrian traffic and there's limited sidewalks in that area. And so a lot of the time students are having to cross the street and walk in the dirt on the side of the road and all sorts of things. So we really want to be conscious of widening intersections and the sidewalks and stuff too. Do we have any better diagrams to show, you know, where this is happening and where there's pedestrian activated crossing over, is there striped crosswalk in that way there too? And I just want to see a little more information because, you know, NCDOT has a history of making things better for cars and not necessarily putting pedestrians as the highest priority. And so if they're going to improve this, we'd like to make sure that as, again, this area is adding hundreds of apartments in this area and there's just increasing pedestrian traffic, and we want to make sure it stays, or it's made in the safest way possible as we're improving things.
Unfortunately, this is the best drawing that I've got that they furnished. So I don't have a better drawing for this one. Now there is in the STIP, there is a project to make improvements along all of Sardis Road, but it's still some time off in the future.
Yeah, but at the same time, as we don't want any improvements we make now would hopefully make their improvements then connect to, you know, we want to make this above standard so that when they make the improvements up to a standard, this intersection isn't below than that new standard. It seems like we should have more information about this than what they provided, just because, I mean, it's great they're improving it, but at the same time is that if they improve it in a way that isn't going to be, you know, cohesive with what they're going to do in the future, or if it's a way that just makes cars be able to whip around that corner really fast, you know, by the gas station there, because now they have a right turn lane, that's not safer for pedestrians trying to cross the street there, because it's a little bit of a rise. It's sharper than a right-hand turn there. I could easily see where cars are not going to be looking for pedestrians at that intersection and just whip around the corner, and that would be make it a more dangerous situation for pedestrians than the current situation in which they have to stop and make a harsher right-hand turn. You know, they have to come to a much lower speed to be able to make that turn currently than they might with a right turn lane. But again, we don't have a really good drawing to show what the turning radius is for that turn lane, and you know what the speed design is for it, and what their sight lines are going to be for pedestrians crossing the street there. It's just, we don't have a lot of information.
Right. But if I'm not mistaken, right now there is no crosswalk and there is no pedestrian signals at this location either. So they are adding that.
Which is great, but we don't want to say, well, that's good enough because they're doing that if they put it at a really bad angle, or if they're facilitating cars making that turn faster and with less, you know, caution for pedestrians. Even if they put a crosswalk in there and a pedestrian signal, we know that motorists don't oftentimes look at those things. They're just looking to see if a car's coming. So we want to make sure that it's positioned in such a way that it's easiest to see pedestrians there too. And again, it's a tighter than right-hand turn, you know, bigger than 90-degree turn there. And I know people are generally looking for cars that are coming, you know, from the opposite direction on Sand Hill Road. I think that it turns into there, you know, I think Sand Hill turns and Sardis Road ends, but it's just, it's an intersection. And then because cars are coming from the other direction downhill, and if they're going to make a left-hand turn there, it's just, that's what they're looking for. They're not looking at pedestrians. I'm afraid we're going to make this, again, not maybe necessarily more dangerous for pedestrians, because like you said, there's no pedestrian crosswalk or signalization there now, but we don't make it as safe as it possibly could be.
Okay. Well, but this is
Yeah,
all I
know.
got.
And you know, I don't know the answers. I'm just expressing my concerns so that.
Sure, no, I appreciate it.
Yeah. So thanks.
Other question? Joseph? You're muted.
Yeah, Ken, sort of along the same lines as Randy, the drawing is a little bit hard to read. Can you tell us what the distance from of the project from the sidewalk improvements to the corner approximately? How long is that stretch where the right turn lane will be?
Well, unfortunately, there's no dimensions on this drawing, so I do not know that information.
That's unfortunate because that's the best way to evaluate it. I also echo Randy's concern about continuation of pedestrian traffic up to the school and beyond. I'm hopeful that that sidewalk improvement can be extended further than
Not
just.
on this project. Not on this project. It can't. They don't have enough money to do it on this project. They're just trying to concentrate on the intersection itself.
Yeah. Well, I see it as a net improvement, but I do see some shortfalls as well.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
And I'll be glad to share all this back with the DOT, the concerns for the committee.
I think some dimensioning would be helpful, or information of the extension of the improvement. That would be useful. Thank you.
Sure. Joe?
I think Jack was ahead of me, so.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry, Jack.
Thanks, Joe. I'll be quick. I suppose just for the record, this, and to echo what Randy was saying, is this is an atrocious intersection. I can't imagine a pedestrian ever wanting to use it. And I know there's a bigger context of more work done, but it is, I never see pedestrians there. Maybe every once in a while a bike rider. Maybe that was Randy, but just for the record, I would love to see some improvements in this area down the road to the extent that we can.
Thanks, Jack. All right, Joe.
Yeah, I had my hand up again and then put it back down because Randy pretty much said everything, but my comment would just be, I mean, this looks like a napkin sketch, and I don't necessarily want to go down too harsh on NCDOT because obviously maybe this is where they're trying to save the money, right? I mean, let's just say that if this came before P&Z, I would not vote for it. I mean, this doesn't describe anything of what's going on. I don't see how this makes it safer for cars turning, because I think, as Randy said, that right turn lane is just going to be seen as a slip lane. People are going to barely slow down and try to make that turn. I think instead of having rear end crashes, you're going to have crashes that are going to be more head on side swipe as people make that right hand turn without slowing down. So man, this is bad as far as the design, like in the drawing. I'll say that there's no information.
Any other comments or questions? Randy?
I'm sorry. So just one more thing. It seems to me like maybe, and I don't know the executive process. First of all, I appreciate so much that this commission gets a chance to review these kinds of things. I think it's really important. So I really appreciate that we're involved in this process, but it seems to me the way it's presented that NCDOT is saying that, well, this is a formality. They don't really care. They're not going to look at this very carefully. Just give them whatever, anything, and then they'll approve it and it'll go on from there. And I don't want us to be looked at that way. I would like us to be looked at as being a group of people that have a lot of experience in a wide variety of areas that can be helpful in terms of making sure that the best design possible is used in these situations. And it doesn't seem like NCDOT is viewing us in that way. So, I would propose that we don't approve this now and we ask for more information to come back at the next meeting. And I don't know what their timeline is on this, but it seems to me like they should give you the information that you need to be able to present it to us in an appropriate way so that we can make an informed decision, not just be like a slam dunk. Oh, they saw it, let's move on.
Yes, and if I could add, as I've been listening to all the comments, I was going to suggest that, Randy, is why don't we just don't even take a vote on it. Let me go back to the DOT and I'll do that as soon as I get off the phone call here and see if I can't, or see, first of all, do they have a better drawing, and see if we can't get better plans.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Ken, if possible, also, I'd love the bigger context too. Maybe that information is out there already, but I'd love to see what designs are in the future for Sardis Road and Sand Hill, given the growth that's over there. If there's any additional context they can provide, that would be helpful.
Yeah, and I don't think that's available. I think it's just an identified project, but I don't think there's been any work done on it so far.
Okay.
All right. Well, thanks everyone. Randy, please.
Just one more thing though, too. This would be a great chance for us to advocate though, then for whatever, since they don't have plans already for Sardis Road that are publicly available. Again, I occasionally ride my bike on Sardis Road, which is crazy as that seems, but I need to cut from Brevard Road to Sand Hill Road sometimes. And so the only way to do that, the only opportunity there is to take Sardis Road. And that's harrowing because there's, like a 3-inch shoulder and no sidewalks. And anyway, so it might be a chance for us, since they don't have that, to, in this process now here, advocate for appropriate facilities so that people can get through there by not just having to have a car. But I don't think we have bus service on that road. There aren't sidewalks on the road. There aren't bike facilities on that road. It's a car only facility right now. And it goes right by the Franklin School of Innovation. And again, hundreds of apartments already, and they're adding hundreds more. So this would be a great chance for us to advocate with NCDOT that when they do the plans, that they have facilities that are going to encourage multimodal transportation and not just cars to use the road.
Excellent. Yeah, I don't mean to belabor the point, but I feel like this area is getting, we're seeing higher density residential coming in across the street. We're seeing some more commercial coming in. So I think these conflicts are only going to continue. So I like the idea of kind of just making sure that we're doing all we can here. Any other comments or questions? Jessica, do we need a motion to table, or can we just table it? What's the best move forward here?
We can just table it. We don't need to have a vote to table it.
Okay, great. So I think we'll table this for now. Ken, thank you very much. And
yes, and I'll come back to you next month.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
All right.
Thanks,
Thank
Ken.
you. All right. I'm going to jump off now. Enjoy your
All right.
meeting.
And I apologize about my camera not being on. I too am having issues when it rains. For whatever reason, my internet gets really bad. So I've dropped off already once. I don't want that to happen again. Okay, the next item is the City County Joint Transit Planning Project. We do have public comment. Jessica, should I read that?
Sure. Why don't you go ahead and read that, and I will get this queued up.
Okay. So we received one comment from Carmen and Artsy, and that I believe everyone has a copy of it, but I'll read it aloud. So Asheville Regional Transit Coalition is advocating for a joint study between the city and county, analyzing transit operations as well as potential revenue streams and governance models. The first step is to explore city and transit connectivity through strengthening collaborative transportation planning. We hope the study will look at equitable access connecting residents of the city and county to jobs, workforce development and training, education, healthcare, childcare, food, and affordable housing. Next, capital needs include fleet, facilities, and operational potential. Next is the operations frequency, hours of service, ease of transfers, length of trips. Next is the increasing ridership, decreasing carbon footprint of transportation, connection to park and ride, zero fare free, carpool, van pool, land use and planning, better mobility for visitors and tourists. And finally, potential benefits include the transit authority, dedicated funding, governance models, cost savings, reduction of duplicative operations and capital investments, and reduce stress and need for downtown parking. So thank you to Artsy and Carmen for that comment. And with that, Jessica, do you want to take over this conversation?
Sure. Thank you. So I have a presentation for you guys today to give you a little bit of an update. And also we will send out a copy of this presentation to everybody in the group after the meeting. Let me see. Okay, so just want to start with some of the key takeaways. The most important thing to remember is that we are at the very, very beginning of this project, and we are here today to get some early input from you on what you think are the must-have topics or subjects to make sure that we include in the scope of work that we're going to be working with the county to put together that will eventually go into a request for proposal. And these last three bullet points are are really just to kind of set the stage to say that we expect that this process will be equal between the city and the county, and that we'll be partners throughout the whole thing in all aspects, all phases, all pieces of it. We also, oops, sorry about that. Shoot. Let me get back here. Okay. We also are planning to make sure that this is a data-driven process. So the analysis, the recommendations, the evaluations, all those things, we want to make sure that we are making decisions based on data that we have collected. And we also want to reinforce that we expect to have community engagement throughout the entire project at all phases, and it's going to be a very critical component of the project as we move forward. This is a diagram of what we think the project timeline is. It's very simple because again, we're at the very, very beginning. So what I would consider us to be in the pre-project phase. So we're in the prep phase right now. And there's still a lot of little pieces that we have to do to get closer to having an actual project kickoff. So right now we are in the initial input gathering phase to gather feedback from everybody. So we make sure that when we put the scope of work together, the detailed scope of work together, we haven't missed anything. And then we also have to get our budget requests approved. So city staff and county staff have each submitted budget requests for the next fiscal year. We've each submitted a request for $300,000. And we are, not, if and when those budget requests get approved, we wouldn't be allowed to start spending money until July 1st of this year. So what we're doing right now is just gearing up for implementing or getting to the project phase. So once we've got a scope of work together, we will be putting that within a request for proposals and issuing that request for proposals, selecting a consultant with a selection team, and then eventually get to execute a contract. I think it's going to be September or October before we have an executed contract, which means that we expect we'd be actually kicking off sometime in the fall of this year. And my guess is that the project itself is going to take 12 to 18 months. And of course, the implementation, once we have a plan, we in hand, then we move to implementation, and that could be 1 year, 1 to 10 years or longer. These bullet points are just the kind of the outline of what the scope of work that we're going to be drafting will be comprised of, and I'll go over each one of these in the next few slides. So this is a purpose statement that city and county staff worked on together to come up with. And basically what we are trying to say with this statement is that we are going to work together, both jurisdictions, to develop a joint transit master plan, and that we want to improve quality, accessibility, and long-term economic financial sustainability of public transit services. And we, both local governments want to improve transit services for residents and visitors, determine the best governance structure, and identify sustainable financial resources. We also collectively, the city and county staff work together to come up with 3 guiding principles. Kind of already mentioned some of these, but the intention is that both the city and the county will be equal partners, will be represented equally throughout the process. But we also have to recognize that each of us have individual goals as well as shared goals and needs. So we want to make sure that we take account of all of that throughout this project. Again, data-driven in the process, the analysis, and the recommendation. And we want to be collaborative and involve the community throughout the entire process. So these bullets here are meant to summarize the goals and objectives of the plan. What we hope is that we'll get recommendations that improve, enhance, increase each one of these key aspects. So the plan is going to be framed around equity, which for this means reducing disparities for communities or people facing barriers. We want to have recommendations to improve connectivity, so strategically linking key destinations such as employment, recreation, activity centers, and other key destinations. System attractiveness, and with that, what we're really referring to is enhancing existing service and making it more reliable, higher quality, and more convenient. Access and mobility, that is touching on wanting to expand service or expand capacity, which could mean more frequency, different or new routes, longer operating hours, etc. And then financial sustainability and governance. So we want to get out of this process recommendations that speak to additional sources of revenue, making sure that the transit system has dedicated funding, and the governance structure. What does that look like in terms of who is operating the system? Is it the city and the county, just like it is now, or is it a regional authority or some other kind of combination of governance? Environmental sustainability. So we want to look at ways that we can reduce carbon production and greenhouse gases. And lastly, economic growth, strengthening economic ecosystems, and that refers to workforce development and access to jobs and employment opportunities. Some of the initial major components that we expect to be part of the scope of work include conducting assessments and analysis of existing conditions, existing plans and policies, and then also looking at future demand. So what are the expected growth patterns and land use changes, demographic changes that might take place that could have an impact on transit services? And then these bullets are meant to represent other major components that we expect to be key parts of the scope of work, and that we would expect to have comprehensive and prioritized recommendations in. And that includes, again, the governance structure, how the governments can collaborate better, service design and delivery. And that really is speaking to capacity of the system, differences in operations. So things like on-demand transit or fixed route, which is what ART is right now, or microtransit. So what are some different options that we could look at for designing and delivering service? The capital component of this is, and I think is something that we didn't really focus a whole lot on in the last transit master plan, and that is making sure that we understand what the fleet requirements and needs are and what our facility requirements and needs are. And then kind of related to that, carbon reduction, we want to look at ways to have a more environmentally sustainable system, and we need to look at that in the context of our capital needs. Most importantly, how all of that relates to our financial sustainability. So fare structure and policy and financial planning and funding, looking at the fare structure is just one tiny component of our revenue. But if we were to look at changes to our fire structure, including zero fare, how does that influence or impact our operations? Is it going to drive higher ridership, which means you might need more frequency or more buses? So there's definitely a big impact that fare structure can play on your financial sustainability. And then finally, implementation would be the last component that kind of summarized the action steps from the plan. So community collaboration, we expect that one of the first big deliverables that we would work on, the city and the county would work on with the chosen consultant or consultant team, would be to put together a communications, engagement, and collaboration plan that would outline all of the methods and ways that we're going to make sure that we include the community in this project. So when I say community, I mean riders, non-riders, residents, visitors, businesses, our institutions, and other service providers, to make sure that they all have a voice in this process. And we expect that the city and the county will work together to make sure that we maximize participation and involvement across the county. And this is just a bullet list of ways that we envision that we could do some of our collaboration and community engagement. Some of these are pretty traditional, public meetings and workshops and events. We surveys online and in person. But we also think that we would like to use some like a project steering committee, do interviews and focus groups, potentially even have some ambassadors to help us collect information and input from people. And then of course, utilize our existing committee and commission structures to gain public involvement. So next steps are, right now, as I mentioned, we're in our early input gathering phase. Actually, I gave this presentation yesterday to Transit Committee and forgot to change the MMTC tomorrow. So we gave this presentation to Transit Committee yesterday. We want to hear from you guys today. And I do know that we're going to be presenting to the City Council Committee, the Planning and Economic Development Committee, on April 10th. And so we're trying to work in some touches with folks. We'll be reaching out to Artsy and seeing if there's any other groups that we can get in on their agendas in the next month or so. Because then we want to make some revisions to our scope of work framework and start to actually draft a scope of work document, and also have that available as part of the budget approval process, which we're all working on feverishly now. But I think the council will be looking at the manager's budget in May, and I believe the county commission is going to start looking at budget proposals around the same time frame. So assuming that we are going to get our respective budgets approved, then we want to be basically ready to issue an RFP. So we'll start developing that RFP so that we could have it out in the public for consultants to bid on shortly after July 1st. We would put together a selection committee and eventually execute a contract with a chosen consultant team. So again, just the key takeaways, and just want to emphasize we're in the very infancy of this project, and we just want to make sure that we're not missing anything, and that we really have a good handle on what the must-have things are for us to include in this project, which is going to be a long-term and very important project for us with the county. And I am happy to answer any questions.
Joe?
Yeah, Jessica, hi. I had the pleasure of hearing this presentation yesterday too at the Transit Committee, and it was very inspiring. And I know it's a lot of information that we'll be deriving, but certainly a necessary step. You mentioned microtransit. I'm not too familiar with that term. Could you describe what that is as an option to explore?
It's very teeny tiny buses. No, it's well, I mean, it kind of is. It's something that is sometimes it can be also referred to as like the first mile, last mile of transit, or which could be that you have smaller vehicles that are perhaps collecting people in a smaller area and then feeding into a larger transit system, or they could be microtransit could also be like shuttles and things of that nature that feed into a larger system. So it's really around the concept of that the agencies typically can't afford to pay for large buses and high frequency all over the place. So you might utilize a different kind of way to collect riders and bring them to those key corridors via a different type of vehicle or a different type of service. If that makes sense.
Yes, thank you. I did envision microbuses, as you said. Would these be, I mean, it would basically be a mixture of modes that would feed into the basic transit network. I see.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Randy?
Yeah, one of those ways to feed into the basic transit network is by bike and pedestrians, and too. So we kind of want to make sure that when we go this process too, that we think of even the bigger picture, which would be, transportation feeding into transit so that it makes the most sense for the most people. So sometimes that would be parking lots for cars, to park in so they could take transportation that way. But oftentimes it would be having bike routes that the city and county would be planning to feed into the system, bike facilities at the transit centers or transit routes too, so have sheltered, well-lit, secure bike parking, for example, so that people could ride their bikes there, and then to make sure that there's bike routes and safe ways to get there, sidewalks as well for pedestrians, things like that too. So we want to make sure that as we proceed in this, we're not just looking at just transit, but how transit fits in, what's going to connect to those transits too, not just, that it's near existing facilities or hubs, but also ways for people that have to do that last mile or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 miles if they're on a bike, maybe to get to the transit as well too. So just, I just want to make sure that that's always ever present. And I know, Jessica, for you, it is, that's your background and stuff too. So you think about it that way too. But I know sometimes in the county, people don't think that way. And just as we work forward, if you're thinking it just from how you're going to get buses from here to there, then that you lose sometimes the opportunity to have many more people use the transit system by having great connectivity using other forms of transportation too.
Joe?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank you, Jessica, and all of staff and certainly county as well. I mean, I know this has kind of been percolating. I know Multimodal's been talking about it. Maggie Ullman was kind of a big proponent of it when she was on Multimodal. So I just want to say thank you. I think this is great, and I look forward to, I guess, probably more watching from the sidelines on this one, because it'll definitely be past my time. But yeah, congratulations. I'm glad this is definitely looks like it's got a way forward. So thanks.
You can be in our steering committee, Joe.
Thanks, Joe. Yeah, I remember.
I think I'm taking a hiatus for a while.
I don't blame you.
I remember when we did our field trip last year to the bus barn and to the depot, and we were talking about capacity issues and function issues that we're running into, and then this kind of idea. There's a confluence of those two things kind of happening at once. So it's really amazing to see just in those few months how much this has come together. So it's really exciting to see, and I look forward to being a part of it. Any other comments? Elise.
Hi, Jessica. I've got a couple of questions. I'm kind of catching up since this is my first meeting. You mentioned that there was a master plan developed previously. Is that right? And
yes.
when was that developed?
So the city has a transit master plan that it adopted in 2018. So can't believe it's already 5 years old. But it is, and I do want to mention that, I want to make clear that our intention is not to trash that plan. I think there is a lot of really good stuff in that plan that, we haven't even really implemented 90% of that plan. And so I think
was my next question.
Yeah. So I think recognizing that there's still really good stuff in there that I think are still high priorities for transit riders and for the city and for the county. And so I think we'll be pulling forward a lot of that stuff still. So that I don't expect those priorities that were identified there to go away. I think they'll still kind of move forward with this. And the county has a lot of needs as well. And, the county provides our paratransit. So the city contracts with the county to provide paratransit. That's federally required of us. And then the county has their own fixed route service, and they do a lot of other on-demand transit services for the community. And so even though we are like the big fixed route provider, the county's providing a lot of transit services as well. And we, jointly see this opportunity to come together and see if we can maximize our resources together. So just Elise, just so you know, on the bottom of our agenda, there's a list of plans with links. Hopefully those links are still active, but we wanted to make sure that those are always accessible for everybody on the committee to peruse those things.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I am seeing that now in 2018. My other question is just kind of around funding. I guess you said that the city and the county were each going to put in $300,000, and I'm assuming that's just for hiring the consultant and developing the plan. And then something that comes up every year when it comes to budgeting is that transit just doesn't get enough money to do the baseline that it's trying to do now. And so although plans are great, unless there's money to implement the improvements, it's just on paper. And I know that finding the funding is going to be part of this analysis. I just wonder, how realistic is it that we'll have the money that we need to implement these recommendations?
That's a great question. And to be honest, I think, and I don't want to speak for the county, but one of the city's probably primary reasons for wanting to do this is to try to get to a place where we have a more financially sustainable plan, and taking into account not just operations, but fleet needs and facility needs as well, and set ourselves up for the possibility of having some new revenue sources. There are opportunities that we have that have not yet fully been realized, if you will. And there's a transit sales tax that is currently legally allowed that would be, I think, a massive help financially to transit in Buncombe County. Of course, there's pros and cons to that, but that's an opportunity that I think the city is hoping to use this plan to get to a place where that might become reality. And that's kind of the big fish as far as revenue but there's some other smaller but important revenue sources that we could look at, and wouldn't be possible if we weren't coordinated together more closely. So this is meant to really get us closer to a more healthy financial situation, I think.
Awesome. Thank you for that.
Sure.
Any other comments or questions? All right. Well, thanks, Jessica. It's come a long
Thanks,
way.
guys.
So we've got a road ahead of us too.
Yep, that's for sure. We'll keep you
Okay.
updated.
Thank you. Okay, the next item is our first item on unfinished business, which is the Greenway Committee and Bike Ped Task Force. Jessica?
Oh boy, you're gonna give it to me. Just kidding. This has been, I think somebody used the word percolating earlier, and I think that's a really good word for this conversation. We have had it on the agenda for the last couple of months, but didn't really get to fully discuss it. But essentially what we're talking about is, I don't know if combination is the right word, whatever the right word is, but bringing together a new committee that would essentially combine the Greenway Committee and the Bike Ped Task Force. So we want to make sure that everybody here gets a chance to weigh in on that. And the concept that staff is proposing, which is just a recommendation or a proposal, is that we have a subcommittee of this group that comes together and kind of works on the side to come up with a new committee name. Active Transportation Committee is something that's been floated out there as possibly a good name. But this subcommittee would come up with a new name, come up with new bylaws and rules of procedure, figure out what the membership makeup would look like, come back to the Multimodal Transportation Commission with recommendations and things to approve. And so that's what we have proposed, or what I proposed as the motion today. But and we don't have to vote on anything today, but we just want to start that conversation with you guys, and let y'all have at it.
So Jessica, one of the things that I understand is that this is being pushed forward because we're starting to see greenways melding into some of the challenges or opportunities that we had within Bike Ped and vice versa. And so it really we took a step back and said, it seems like maybe these things are more alike than they are dislike, not alike.
Mm-hmm.
And so maybe, and from there, it was like this metamorphosis that's going to turn into something new. Are you seeing, when I was reading through the motion, I noticed that you're kind of looking for maybe a dissolution of the current committees. Are you seeing that would happen now, and then maybe in the future we would have this new one occur, or the rebirth happen, or is it what's the timing like? Is that one of the things I'd like to do is kind of keep the work going for the committees that are happening now, and then once we kind of get our ducks in a row on whatever the new thing looks like, we can then kind of have the transfer.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, that's a good point. And that is completely fine with me. We're not on any specific timeline with this, but so it would be perfectly acceptable to me if others are interested in doing that, to keep the two groups kind of going as they have been. But I would like to maybe have some sense of a timeline for resolving it or bringing it back forward to the commission. And yeah, just to touch on what the kind of the driving concept behind this is a couple of things. One is we've had some staffing changes the last year in our transportation planning division. Lucy is our new transportation planning manager. And so one of the things that we've done is we've sort of broken down the silos between greenways and Bike Ped. because we want to make sure that we want to make sure there aren't any silos, because greenways is a type of facility, right? And both pedestrians and bicyclists and all kinds of people use them. And so we want to make sure all of these facilities are coordinated. And so from a staffing standpoint, we also have done the same thing where we don't have a greenway planner and a bike ped planner. We have planners that are working on all of the different projects. And so we're trying to mirror that a little bit with this idea of having one committee that's covering all of the different issues and facilities and needs. So that's kind of how we see it coming together, and I think it would be a beneficial thing for everybody here as well.
Excellent. So yeah, we can kind of open up for discussion. Any comments or questions or thoughts on this idea? Elise.
Well, first of all, let me say that it totally makes sense. I feel like it makes sense combining these because they do have such similar interests. And my question isn't so much for Jessica as much as just a thought to toss out to the group. Does this create a dichotomy between transit and the bicycle and pedestrian? They're the active transport as we're calling it. Does it create too much a divide between those two issues?
Yeah, that's interesting. I don't know. I feel like they both can exist. Are you saying like kind of a conflict for competition for funding, or what are you thinking about there?
I guess I'm just thinking about how it takes this like 3-level system and distills it down to 2, and how when you have a binary system like that, there can be some competition, I guess.
Okay. Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, maybe that's certainly something we could kind of, focus on to make sure we don't create that, unintentionally create something like that. Randy?
Yeah, in a lot of communities, active transportation includes transit. So that is, the term, if we use active transportation for the new committee as a title for it and not have transit included in it, then that kind of might not be in line with what's being used nationally and internationally. But anyway, that's a side note. But I can understand, right, Elise's concern for that for sure. I think though, so being heavily involved in bike ped and peripherally involved in the greenways, that there's a lot of consensus from both groups, especially from bike ped, because again, as Jessica said, there's been some staffing changes and stuff too that has directly affected bike ped. That this is a good move. There isn't much push. There wasn't much pushback at first. I think there's very little, if any, pushback at all now to doing this. The biggest thing I think is just people are concerned about how we do it. We want to do it in a way that's really inclusive and includes everybody's interests, and making sure that we don't lose anything in this transition, that we make it a bigger thing overall. But just there's enthusiasm for sure from both sides. And so as we move forward, you're right. I think that we need to be careful, as Elise is saying, not to create a situation in which we want to best support all aspects of multimodal transportation. And that's really what MMTC does, but then the committees oftentimes will do other kind of work that we can't really do here necessarily. And it gives another voice for public input too. So that's something that we want to have as many people as possible that are interested in providing input into transit or bike ped or greenway issues, a direct way to be able to influence policy in the city. And so the committees is the way to do that, the commission is the way to do that, and then moving forward from there too. But I just wanted to make sure that people knew that there has been ongoing discussion for months now in the different bike ped and greenways, and people think it's a good move, and we're excited to get moving into it. And people just want to be intentional in how we do it, which I think is important. But there's not, like I said, I don't think there's any active resistance to it at all.
And just to add, I think from a public facing perspective, I think it makes a lot of sense from more simple for members of the public to understand and keep track of things that really do fall in the same bucket. So I do think it makes a lot of sense too.
Okay, thanks, Jack. Yes, I think one of the thoughts was that we would maybe solicit some hand raising here to be a part of just hammering out some of the broader aspects of how this is going to look in the future, and come back to the group with some ideas. I think the goal is to make sure that we don't leave any blind spots from either of these groups when we're looking at how it's going to look like in the future. So is there anyone that's interested in being a part of that discussion and kind of offline? Randy? Anyone else up for it? I'd be willing to be a part of that as well with you, Randy. Jack?
Yeah, I would jump in too, just to give a Greenway perspective from my work in that arena. So would love to get a voice. Okay,
perfect. Joe?
Yeah, I mean, I echo the bike ped involvement. As transit liaison, I'd welcome the opportunity to be involved as well.
Perfect. And I think what we can do is just kind of, Jessica, if this makes sense to you, we'll kind of go through that list that we have been talking about and you just kind of brought up, just to make sure we can address some of those things, and then come back. We can take a look at it and then solicit some questions, maybe go back one more time, take a look at it again, make sure we kind of have those pieces together, and then we can, kind of hammer it into something a little bit more formal that we can, present to council.
Well, yeah, just to clarify, we don't actually need to have council buy-in.
Okay.
Since this is subcommittees under multimodal commission's purview, you guys are really the last stop shop for deciding how you want subcommittees to be organized and structured. I do think in general this is consistent, or it certainly is not inconsistent with some of the efforts that have been going on with regard to boards and commissions. And we've already talked to boards and commissions about it, just to make sure we were in alignment there. So I think we're all in alignment, and you guys don't need approval from the council to do this.
Okay, great. Randy?
So just for Elise, because I know you're new, Elise, and we had discussed, several years ago now, Jessica, when you said 2018 was the transit plan, took me back for a second, but because I was here then. And so transit, though, the committee at one point had talked about becoming a transit commission. And there was a little bit of movement towards that, because we felt that transit maybe it was just worthy of being a commission, perhaps. That was one of the thoughts. But at the time, transit committee was not in a position to move into that role as a commission. And then we kind of tabled it for a while now. And so, but just wanted to let you know that has been discussed and is still floating out there, right, Jessica? I mean, it's just in kind of a holding pattern at this point. Nothing's been decided, except for that we're not going to move forward at this time. But there was quite a bit of discussion. We talked about it for several months, and there was some work done towards that. So, so it's possible in the future that transit might become its own commission even too. So, just so you know that it would doesn't, and it obviously doesn't make sense, I think, to have transit also be a part of this active transportation thing too, because then it dilutes it, I think, more than what it needs to be diluted at this point in time too. So just a point of information, but I just want to make sure you knew that, and I'm sure that there's a presentation someplace that Jessica could point you to that talked about, probably the last time we talked about this too, but that, we talked about that before.
Great. And so what I'll do is I will reach out to Joe, Jack, and Randy for us to find a time to meet and discuss, if that works with everybody. And then we'll kind of get things going offline and come back with something hopefully by next month. And we'll keep you in the loop. Lucy, hello.
Hello, everyone. I'm hoping that you'll include Claudia Nix, the chair of the Greenway Committee, in your discussions.
Absolutely. That's a great comment. And yes, I will make sure that she is included. Perfect. Kenny?
Yeah, should we make a motion of support for maybe not the dissolution as it was termed, but support for the restructuring? And then that way the Greenway Committee and the Bike Ped Task Force members know that they have our support to move forward with the restructure.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea to send a clear message on what we're trying to accomplish. Do you want to make a motion?
Absolutely. Yeah. I move that we support the reconfiguration of the existing Greenway Committee and Bike Ped Task Force into a unified and stronger and sleeker and better committee of some kind.
Excellent. Outstanding motion. Do we have a second? Randy, a second? Any other comments or questions on this motion? We will do a roll call. Stand by. Let me get my list. Randy Moore.
Aye.
Kenny Armstrong.
Aye.
Jack Eigelman.
Aye.
Joe Chesler.
Absolutely, aye.
Elise Marver.
Aye.
And I'm an aye as well. Motion carries. Thank you, Kenny. That was a great idea. Okay. The next item that we have is we're going to receive an update on the proposed Project Aspire development project. Joe?
Yes, thanks. I just wanted to give a quick update. I know I mentioned it at the very tail end of our meeting last month. And since this is such just absolutely huge project, I feel like, it was important just to kind of keep running tabs. And Elise, just for real quick, since I know this is your first meeting, so this project, and for anyone else who's not quite sure what's going on with this, this is a project that's being brought forth to the city planning department and ultimately through Planning and Zoning Commission and City Council to redevelop essentially all of the property that encompasses the area around the First Baptist Church downtown and the YMCA that essentially is bounded by 240 Central Avenue, Woodfin Street, College Street, and Charlotte Street. So it's a fairly large area, and just, real basics. I mean, it ends up being about 1 million square feet. So this is kind of on par to something, the size of like development wise, the size of something along the lines of like an Asheville Mall or a Biltmore Park. It's something that really Asheville has not seen in a long time. And, Biltmore Park was part county, part city, and pretty much all Biltmore, so they could do what they wanted to. So yeah, definitely a lot going on here. It is thank you, Jessica, for popping that up. I'm going to put into the chat when I'm done here some links to some websites with some information. This is an ongoing process about how this is going to get reviewed in the city. Tomorrow afternoon, the Design Review Commission is going to do an informal review. It's going to be virtual. Like I say, I'll put the link to the website in the chat here in a minute. You can, if you've got time to watch it while it's actually going on, or the recording of it. There isn't, and I'm not proposing that there would be a way for this commission for multimodal to specifically review this, but given, certainly my strong desire to see multimodal incorporated into all planning, and obviously as the liaison with the PZC, I definitely would like to have this commission's input, and whether, that will be somewhat more informal and remains to be seen exactly how that's going to work. I think that's more of a conversation for Dennis and Jessica and I, but definitely wanted to at least kind of give you a real quick update. It looks like this may come to P&Z May, June. That's kind of what it's looking like right now, but that's still very tentative. I think there is some brake tapping going on behind the scenes on this one, because it is just so huge, and people are still, all the commissions that are looking at this are still trying to wrap our heads around it. So, but yeah, I'm happy to, certainly answer any questions offline or now. Feel free to email me. And like I said, I'm going to drop some information in the chat window, because I think that's probably just the easiest way to get it to you. So
Great, thanks, Joe. I have a quick question for you. So when you see projects like this, typically when do you see this group get, or the transit piece of it get involved? Is it pretty much from when it hits the ground running, or is it more of a kind of a feedback situation? What's the normal process?
That's a good question, Dennis. Again, this project is just so large. I'm going to say there's not a normal process with this one. Typically, this is, transportation reviews this at the technical review committee, which is a whole separate, review that's run through development services division. And that's all about technical requirements, right? And there's certain things they have to meet. This is going to be a conditional zoning. So essentially they're going to be asking for, things that they would like to do, some exceptions to what the underlying zoning would allow. And it's the chance of Planning and Zoning Commission and the city and city council to say, well, if you want this, will you give us this? A classic one, kind of a great example is, if you're building apartments, will you do some affordable housing?
Right.
And so that's kind of that give and take with conditional zonings. With this one, again, just being so large, I think I feel like it would be really good to have this commission's, again, input in some way, as opposed to just the, technical transportation aspect of the city review, if that makes sense. And I'm sure Jessica has a comment about that as well.
I totally agree with Joe. I mean, this is the biggest project that I think the city's had come before it. And I think as far as precedent, there isn't really any, I would say, for a project to come before the Multimodal Transportation Commission or really any other commission per se. And so we do need to be kind of, I don't want to say careful, but cognizant of recognizing that maybe this is a one-off situation, because we certainly we can't afford to go down a rabbit hole of having every kind of development project come before this board, which then every other board will want to have the same thing. And so if you think about it, I like to think about it in the sense that, the staff is involved in reviewing every development, whether it's a gas station or a Chick-fil-A or a 10-acre thing like this, which is massive. And then there's also, of course, the city council will weigh in on projects that are conditional zoning. And then in between that, though, the Planning and Zoning Commission is actually a quasi judicial body. So they have rulemaking powers that like a multimodal commission or other commission does not. And I see the Planning and Zoning Commission as sort of the overseer of all things that fall within the comprehensive plan, the Living Asheville Comprehensive Plan, of which transportation and mobility is one part of, right? And so there's 6 major sections to our comp plan. Transportation is one of them, but so is affordable housing and economic development and all these different highly important things that the city is looking to do. And so planning and zoning, it is their role to be looking out for transportation and other interests as well. On that note, though, again, this is kind of a unique. It's a unique project in the sense of its scale and its potential transformation in our downtown, right? So we don't want to overlook that or not provide an opportunity for input. Of course, individual members of the commissioner are welcome to provide comment on any project, right? But I do think that we should bring at least updates maybe about it and utilize Joe. And we can have some offline conversations about what input might look like. because I'd want to make sure that we're thinking about other boards and commissions as well, and like how their input might be asked for or obtained, and not, you know, step on any toes or forget anybody. If there's going to be a sense of like, are they going to be going to Affordable Housing Commission? And I don't know that yet, and I don't think any of us really know what the process is going to be.
Yeah, and Jessica, I will say that, you know, you definitely said that probably better than I could have as far as the whole kind of process, and that is one of the things with this. So we had our I was going to mention it kind of in the updates. We had our Planning and Zoning Commission retreat last Wednesday, and we talked about this amongst QZC and then planning staff and some DSD staff as well. And this project, the way it is likely going to be looked at, and because we are talking about a project that literally probably has a 10-year timeline, right? This is not going to get built in a year or two. This is something that's going to be phased. It's going to be over, you know, many, many years. It's one that we're going to look at, like, here's preliminarily what we're going to do, and then these phases are going to come back for review as those are done. But as a whole, this may be the only chance to say, hey, we really want X, or we really want, you know, something to happen here along Charlotte Street or wherever it may be. And you're definitely correct. I definitely am not advocating that all development projects would come through multimodal. You know, that's kind of what I'm kind of here for, to be able to listen to the comments that multimodal has, you know, about, you know, bike ped, greenways and all that, and kind of take it back to planning and zoning. But again, I think just the scale and nature of this requires perhaps a little bit more like direct, something I can literally take back, you know, and say, this is what multimodal has, you know, requested, or what they have as a commission, you know, asked about. So.
Sounds good.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. And Jessica, I take your point, and I just kind of feel like, because they're the uses that we're going to have a new and shiny, excuse me, YMCA. There's going to be housing, you know, and it just seems like it's almost like a community within a community. So there's some opportunity for us to, you know, get involved. I just didn't know what form that should take. So we'll kind of, you know, maybe discuss offline and come back to bring that stuff in. But it's very exciting. But I also think there's within it, so probably a lot of opportunity to, you know, move these folks through that space, potentially even without cars, you know. So some ideas that we can see when it starts to happen. Any other comments on this one? Ready?
Sorry, I just see like this, you know, so I know like last time when we talked about speed limits, Chris kind of said, here's what we do already in the city, and here's where we're trying to mimic, you know, these speed limits and things like that. And I mentioned it then in the last meeting, but I also think about it now too, is that I think we need to vision what we want in the future, what we want Asheville to be like in the future, not like to mimic other parts of Asheville, but what we want it to be in the future. And so this is a great opportunity to lots of things, and to have like with the Y there and housing there and stuff too, it'd be great to have, you know, a 200 bike parking facility with, you know, again, indoor, you know, sheltered, well-lit, secure bike parking and stuff like that too, so that people from this area can have their bikes. Because if it's affordable housing, oftentimes there's not a lot of extra storage space and stuff too, but they can then have a bike securely there, so they can use all over the city, since they're downtown and easily bikeable to so many different places. And then if people are coming to the Y or to the church or to other places, they could have that, you know, easily make it so that your bike is going to be safe and sheltered no matter what. You know, it'd be great to have that incorporated, you know, like a Dutch style. If you're familiar at all with the way it is in the Netherlands, they have these huge parking areas with, you know, not even just hundreds, sometimes thousands of bicycles in these different areas and stuff like that too. But this would be like, you know, something that's not done any place else in Asheville, and not, you know, is done in a few places in the United States, but not that much. But it's kind of like, how do we create Asheville to be what we want it to be? And if you really want to make multimodal, you know, and again, so it's not a transit center, wouldn't be here, because transit center is other place, but definitely a, you know, a place that would be a transit access, if not hub as well too. But those things should be really included in this project, because that's what we want Asheville to be, that you aren't car dependent necessarily. And in order to not be car dependent, you need those kind of facilities, and there aren't that many places to put it, except for here's a perfect place that's downtown. So I think that we should always keep that kind of thing in mind as we move forward in this as well.
Thanks, Randy. Okay. Well, thanks.
Yeah, and like I said, I'll definitely just keep updates. And again, if anybody has any questions, certainly feel free to email me. And obviously we'll kind of, Dennis, Jessica, we can communicate offline about how to move forward with it. Thanks.
Great. Thanks, Joe. Okay, the next item we have is an update on the update on College Patton Downtown Bike Lane Project and public outreach. Jessica.
Sure. Just wanted to let you guys know that we are putting together a plan to have some kind of public meeting to get some more feedback from a broader group of folks, including stakeholders on these two corridors, but also beyond just the downtown stakeholders. And we are looking at the end of April or mid-April for that event. We are securing a space and trying to kind of develop what that event might look like. So we just wanted to give you a heads up, and we will, in the next couple of weeks, be sharing more details, including date, time, location, etc. So we're hoping to get you guys to attend that if possible and let people know. So we will send out more information when we have more detail. Sorry, yes, yeah. Just FYI, try to don't put stuff in the chat all the time, because then not everybody can, if they're on YouTube or if people are watching us on YouTube, they can't see the chat. So if you want to go ahead and ask that question, at least I'd be happy to answer.
Yeah, sorry. I was hoping one of the other MMPC people would just like pop in and fill me in on that. Is this the project where they were putting the left side bike lane on the one-way section of College? I'm just trying to like get my bearings.
Yeah. So it's actually, we've been calling it the College Patton Downtown Project, Downtown Bike Lane Project, because it's actually College and Patton, adding bike facilities to both of those streets, kind of from Pritchard Park to Biltmore on Patton and Spruce on College Street. The city has a website, project website about it, with the detail about the plan and everything, and something that we've been working on since about this time last year, and made a lot of progress and headway. We have a proposed design in hand, and we just want to have one final hurrah, if you will, in terms of public engagement before we move forward. So looking to do that and get that done in April.
Okay, thank you. Because if I recall, this plan has come before council before, and they either saw something about it. I don't think they voted. Did they?
No, yeah, it's we've mentioned it. We've given project updates to council, but it has not come before them for a vote. And when it gets to that point where it would come before council, it would be at the point where we would have put the project out to bid, and they would be awarding a contract to install it. So we're not quite there yet. We want to finalize our public engagement, and then we'd move it, assuming that we're going to move forward, which I don't foresee us not moving forward. We would put the project out to bid and then come to council for their approval of the contract, or consideration of approving the contract.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, sorry about that. I keep on disappearing. I missed a little bit, but I know that we had a couple of field trips on this project. Did we already talk about that?
We had, well, part of our early public engagement back in March of 2022 or so, we had some walking tours, we had some virtual meetings, and we've gone to Downtown Commission and Downtown Association, and so there's been kind of a steady process of public engagement since about February of last year.
Okay, belt and suspenders kind of situation here.
Yeah.
All right. Any other comments or questions on that item? Okay. On our other unfinished business, Jessica, do you have any other updates you'd like to discuss?
The only thing I would mention is that we have made progress on the bike share study update. Haley has been feverishly working on making some revisions to that and kind of bringing it up to speed. She's also putting together kind of like a one-page summary of what will be what has changed between the original draft a couple of years back and what we're bringing forward. So things like what we've talked about before, like changing the recommendation regarding e-scooters to be more in line with our current direction, which is holding on that. So, you know, things like that. We're going to make a summary sheet of what we are proposing to change or have changed. I know you guys have said like you don't really want me to bring it back to y'all for before we go to council, but I would like to do that. And I think my guess is probably nay. And then we would, theoretically, we would go to council and have them adopt that plan. So yeah, we've made some progress. Joe.
That with the e-scooter thing, because you know what I'm going to ask, it has the removal of e-scooters for personal, correct? In other words, a personal e-scooter is allowed on the street, and we're talking about the because there's the e-scooter ban thing. Is
right,
you know.
Right. Yeah. So what I am planning to include as a recommendation of the study, because the study itself wouldn't change that ordinance that's in place right now, but one of the recommended action steps that would be in this revised plan is to consider revising the ordinance regarding e-scooters and allow personal private ownership and use for e-scooters and other similar type devices. So that's what we're planning to change as far as the recommendations in the plan.
Okay, great. I mean, obviously it's not like one of those things that, you know, APD is not cracking down on people. It's amazing. Like, I feel like every month I see somebody else using, you know, I'm going to use the Bird scooter, but one of those little e-scooters running around. Yeah. And I just hate for something to be like, oh, that what you're doing is illegal. So.
Right. I agree. We need to not be in this weird limbo. Because I mean, there's a lot of different contraptions, if you will, that are being used out there now and are very viable transportation options. And I do think there's a difference between a corporation and a sharing company and a, you know, a normal person like you or me having our own contraption to use.
All right. Elise, did you have a question?
It was answered. I was wanting to clarify if this is for personal and private use, not those like companies that.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Excellent. Okay. So for the new folks, we always try to get updates from the varied committees and groups, and the last couple of months we haven't had time. We do have time today, so we're going to roll into it. Joe, I hate to put you on the spot, but if you want to give a quick transit update, maybe touch on some points of what was discussed at the last meeting. Do you have the opportunity to do that?
Yes, although it's very much in summary. Jessica sort of, well, I should say the principal focus was on the master plan and the combination of the ART and mountain mobility, the city and county systems. The presentation that she gave was duplicated, and there was general buy-in, and congratulations to staff for bringing it to us this far, and looking forward to big results. There really was nothing further that I can recall, unless Jessica, you can recall any specifics other than house cleaning. But that's really all I have to say at this point.
Excellent, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Greenways, Kenny?
Well, we're dissolving. I missed a walkabout. They held the city organized a tour of the route for Nasty Branch Greenway. And I'd love to get an update on that from Lucy or Jessica. I don't know. I think it was to identify locations for public art installation.
Yeah, I can add to that. We had a walk of the Nasty Branch Greenway with members of the Greenway Committee and the Public Art Commission, as well as staff members from PUD and Transportation Planning, to take a look at different locations for a piece of public art along the future Nasty Branch Greenway. And this public art piece is based on a poem that was written by a few youth from the South Side neighborhood in conjunction with the North Carolina Poet Laureate, Jackie Shelton Green. The poem was written about 3 years ago now. We had a workshop that lasted a semester with STEAM Studios in one of their classes to have engineering and art students come up with potential art projects for one of their classes. And there was no recommendation that came out of that class, but the collaboration with STEAM is still very much a strong possibility of us, the city, finding a professional artist who can work with the transposition of that poem into a 3D piece of art, and STEAM Studio helping fabricate in some level, either with another class or with interns. So that was the primary reason why we had the tour.
Dennis, you there?
Dennis is still there.
Okay. Do we have any updates from the bike ped task
Yes.
force folks?
So bike
Randy?
ped, yeah, bike ped, we mostly been focusing on the transition between individual bike ped and greenways, and we have a document on Google right now that talks about things that are important for us to move, make sure are transferred into the new group, and that's available for people on bike ped to provide input. And so that's going on right now, and yeah, so that's primarily what we've been doing, just to make sure that it's a smooth transition, and that things that bike ped's been doing, make sure that those things can continue, and that type of thing. So not a lot of other things at this point.
Great. Joe, did you have anything else you wanted to add about Planning and Zoning Commission?
Not that I can think of. I think I hit the major things. Like I mentioned last week, we had our annual retreat and discussed more about how to incorporate equity into how the planning department looks at zoning and projects through an equity perspective, as well as how the commission does. Spent quite a bit of time talking about that. And then, like I mentioned, also talked some about the Project Aspire and just how we're going to move forward, how the planning department, how the city as a whole, all of the commissions, everybody who touches that is going to really look at that project. So yeah, it was really good.
Great. And I think Elizabeth is maybe not here today. And she's our neighborhood advisory committee member. And I don't think we have any I-26 updates either. I don't know if Dennis is back yet or not. No, he is not. He's abandoned us. Randy, should we go ahead and adjourn?
Yeah, oh, there's Dennis back. So that's okay, Dennis. We just went over the rest of the updates and we're ready to adjourn unless you have something else that you want to bring up.
I do not. I apologize to everybody. Please note our future agenda items and the documents below. We're going to add a few more items to that. There's a comment. We're going to add a few more items to our list. And note our next meeting, which is April 26th. Without further comment, we will take a motion to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, we are adjourned. Thanks, everybody. So sorry about the connection
Bye,
issues.
everyone.